I actually, before I get going, I guess, there's a guy I recently found a channel called Shaun Spins. It's Shaun, Shaun Spins, and he does this sort of thing where he has a lot more knows what he's doing with as far as editing and production, and it's really interesting. He's done Sailing the Seas of Cheese from Primus, and he did some Everclear reviews.
He only had one summer with the Phillies. There goes a couple of plows demonstrating what I said. What I said, hitting us. All right, there you go. Here comes.
And I think we must be about the same age. He might be a little younger than me. He looks a lot younger than me. but a lot of the things he talks about is, I feel like he's had the same experience as me with those songs. But so he's great. Check him out if you don't know about him.
Well, welcome to episode 25. This is Shaun Spins, and I'm your host, Shaun. And I hope everybody is safe and well. And thank you, Chris Burt, for the kind words. And what's that? Complaint hotline. We have a complaint about the Lenny Williams episode. Let's hear it.
Hello, this is a loyal subscriber to Shaun Spins. I have a complaint. Your last video about John Williams, there was something wrong. I didn't see any or hear any Star Wars theme music. I didn't hear Jaws. I didn't hear Raiders of the Lost Ark music. Is there something wrong? Did I have the wrong, wrong channel on? Please clarify this. And also, could you please do someone that I really love a lot? I think everyone will appreciate it. It's an artist by the name of Dan Fogelberg. Excellent artist. Cut short the final life. Thank you very much. Please get back to me. I don't wish to unsubscribe, but mistakes like this are constantly being made. I'll have no choice. Thank you.
Well, I apologize to that subscriber. Last week was not John Williams. It was Lenny Williams. Amazing performer. This week might confuse the subscriber a little more. We have another Lenny this week. Kurt Cobain liked this performer a lot. Here's an image of Kurt Cobain playing air guitar to this Lenny. This week is Lenny Kravitz, and the album will be Circus. And just to clarify more for my subscriber, Lenny Kravitz, not Lenny Montana. Lenny Kravitz. Let's start the show. Episode 25. I've been into Lenny Kravitz's music for some time. I remember the first time I knew of him was because of Lisa Bonet when they got married. And they actually had a different name at that time. And before that, myself and most people in the world grew up watching his mother on the Jeffersons.
Well, I guess that leaves you and me. Yeah, it's been a bad night all around, ain't it? Well, don't just stand there, shorty. Get down.
There's a couple things I find really interesting about Lenny Kravitz. Growing up, I really wanted that same light, minty, lime green Flying V guitar like he had. I found out later that it wasn't really that color, that it was just quality control at Gibson, that it's a white Flying V that just changed colors over time. So that was always interesting to me. Another influence on me wanting to get a Flying V between Lenny Kravitz and Jimi Hendrix. Second thing, I remember Lenny Kravitz growing up would go out of his way to bring in musicians to play strings and things like that. Was not using like software to do it, that wanted real people to play those parts. And I always thought that was great, that I was hiring musicians to play the parts, not just a machine. Third thing, Lenny Kravitz is very spiritual in music. Lenny Kravitz is Jewish, Christian, and sees himself as many faiths and puts it into the music. Now, what I find fascinating about it is he has never been put into that mold as like a religious performer in that group of performers, or never, but yet it's in the music. And probably the biggest selling performer, like religious spiritual music, yet not classified that way. You know, a good example would be a song like Are You Gonna Go My Way? And my fourth thing I find really interesting about Lenny Kravitz is on the records, especially the ones I had, the early ones, I'm not too sure about the later ones, he plays most of the instruments. And that was a big influence on me. A friend of mine used to say the same thing to me, that I should learn how to play the instruments in case I needed to play the part if no one was there, or I would know how to play it. And on these early Lenny Kravitz, it's like Lenny Kravitz playing bass, playing drums, playing guitar. Occasionally someone else will play. And on the road, it's usually Craig Ross on guitar, and sometimes he plays in the studio also, and Cindy Blackman playing drums. And when I got to see him a long time ago, you know, Craig Ross and Cindy Blackman were there playing. As I said, that was a big influence on me, that, you know, I don't have to just be a guitar player. I could play all the instruments. And nowadays, recording with multiple tracks, it's feasible that you can record the drum part and then do the bass part, then the guitar part, then the vocal part, and then you can do the harmony part. So that was a big influence to me. So let's get into the first couple albums that I had on cassette. So those first couple albums I played in the car all the time. I wore out the cassettes. I wore them out. And this is from like 94, 95, 96, 97, 98. I remember just playing them constantly until they wouldn't play anymore. And eventually I'd have to upgrade to the CD. Only once in my life did I find a copy of Are You Gonna Go My Way on vinyl. And it was around 96. And I'm upset to this day that I didn't pick it up. They wanted a lot of money for it. I remember that. Anyways, I would listen to the music a lot because at that time, I just could not listen to Nirvana. And before that, I would listen to Nirvana all the time, but it just made me entirely like upset, sad, depressed, and I needed to listen to something very positive, which Lenny Kravitz provided for me. So the first tape, Let Love Roll, is great. The title song is beautiful. And again, going back to a song like I Built This Garden for Us, he sings a prayer during it. You have a very powerful song, Mr. Cab Driver. Mr. Cab Driver is the same experience that Jean-Michel Basquiat talks about too, about when he was living in New York, like the cabs not picking him up. If one didn't know better, you would almost think Jean-Michel Basquiat wrote that song, because it's this very similar story. And he's talking about what was going on. And the cab driver's not picking him up because of the way he looked. Second album I did not own. I don't know why. I remember when it came out. I remember Slash being part of it or like playing with them. Never had it. Third album I did have, Are You Gonna Go My Way? It's a good album. I feel as though it's a little bit more slick compared to the first album. Different feel, more produced, I'll say. And the album we're going to talk about today is the fourth album, which is Circus. I originally had it on tape, like I said, yet it wore out, so I got it on CD. One of the funny things about this CD, I was looking at it, it still has the receipt. I used to keep receipts sometimes when I would get stuff, and I don't know why I kept the receipt for this one. I got it used. And what cracked me up about the receipt, it's from 1997. What cracked me up though is from Sid's Music, and I missed that store and loved that store, and it closed down a long, long time ago. So the CD must have been $6.99, and I got something for $2. And I'm not thinking it was a cassette, because I don't remember cassettes being in stores too much around 97, so I'm thinking that was a used record. Just goes to show you how much records were worth in 1997, like $2. Now the artwork on it is very dark. This is a different feel to the other couple albums I had. You know, the third album's kind of got this happy feeling to it for most of the songs, and it's kind of got a 70s groove, for lack of better words, to some of the songs. This one has a darker feeling. You know, I've heard that Lenny Kravitz was kind of upset what was going on in the music industry, yet I feel a bigger part to the sadness in this album is his mother being sick, and she passed shortly after this album was released. Still has a lot of spiritual feeling to it, more than the other albums I had, and also not as hidden. Like, it's out there. He's saying the words and talking more. It's not just something kind of hidden in the track, like hidden, kind of like a song like "Are You Gonna Go My Way?" The meaning's kind of hidden. This is out there, and it's there. I got to see Lenny Kravitz on this tour also, which we'll get to a little later, but let's get to the album. Like I said, a little darker, yet I love it. It's just very powerful statements in a lot of it. And starting off with a track like "Rock and Roll is Dead," I heard a critic say, well, he must be upset about the music industry, and it sounds the same, I guess, I imagine. I think that was the point of the article. Yet Lenny's repeating himself in his music, and I don't feel as though that's what the song's about. I feel as though Lenny was upset about the lifestyles in rock and roll, the excess lifestyles that he's upset about, and wanting people to change their lives. Circus is a beautiful song. It's just, again and again, a song like the fourth track, Tunnel Vision, that sounds like a track that needs like a 50-piece horn section. It's great. Can't Get You Off My Mind, I feel as though was probably the one hit on the album. And that's the thing about this song. Lenny Kravitz is the albums I have. It kind of has that feeling that you might have a couple songs that are really fast, and it goes to kind of slow. And this is the part of the album where it does that. Can't Get You Off My Mind. Gets kind of slow. I can imagine that being recorded by country stars. Magdalene reminds me of the song Rosemary from the first album. Has a similar feel to it to me. Funny story about Magdalene. I had a neighbor 15 years ago, same name, and she was shocked I knew how to spell it and say it. And I'm thinking, yeah, there's a song by Lenny Kravitz, and also religious tone to it too with that name. And then it goes into God Is Love. Thin Ice, talking about, again, these deep things. One of the deepest songs I feel too is Don't Go and Put a Bullet in Your Head. For me, I think it was probably the first time I heard a musician speaking about suicide and not keeping it hidden away, like this is something people are dealing with. And it talks about someone's life, and then it talks about, let's change it. Don't do this. Let's change your life. And I put a little something together. If you need help or you know someone that needs help, let's go to that really quick. So I typed in suicide help on Google, and it brought up the 1-800-273-8255 for the national hotline. But then next to it, it had the languages and a hyperlink next to it saying learn more. I clicked it, and I was amazed to bring up different places, different phone numbers, websites, all around the world. Let's type the United States one, and it brings us to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. This website is suicidepreventionlifeline.org, 1-800-273-8255. Just remember, you're not alone, and there's people that have felt like you, and there's people there to help. Let's get into the last two tracks from the album Circus, In My Life Today and The Resurrection, and again, deeper spiritual songs. This is a great album, and I don't feel as though it gets as much credit as Are You Gonna Go My Way, and his next album after this was really popular. It had the song Fly Away on it. I heard that song so many times on the radio around 98, 99, 2000, I've never wanted to hear it again. And I never bought that album. Also, eventually had the cover of American Woman, which I don't really care for. I prefer the original version by the Guess Who. And I imagine for a lot of people that was their first experience of hearing American Woman, yet for me, growing up with my dad, we listened to that album a lot. I'd said earlier I saw Lenny Kravitz in concert, and it was during this album's tour, Circus. And like I said, I find this album to be amazing. It's a little darker, yet there's a reason why, what's going on in his life, and he uses his art to express himself and to help. And not only is it helping him to express the way he's feeling, it's helping other people that can relate. So the tour I saw him on was actually on the Horde Tour. He was part of the Horde Tour that was put up together by Blues Traveler. And it was a big outdoor event, lots of bands. I remember one of the bands I wanted to see actually didn't show up. And it was extremely hot. I remember that. It was in the summer of like 1996. Just picture the sun like right about here, being down in Florida at that time of year. It didn't rain, which is good. And a cousin of mine went with me because he drove. I didn't drive until much later. I didn't get a license until I was almost 19 years old. So he drove. And one of the best stories from the concert, he had like a tuna or a chicken sandwich, and he had half of it. And this is one of the best stories from the concert. He says to me as we're getting out of the car around 10:30 in the morning, and we're not getting back until about 12 hours. He says, "Do you think if I save this other half in the car, it'll be good later?" And I looked at him and I was like, "No! Like, it's going to spoil, like, 100 degrees out here, and you're going to leave a chicken or a tuna sandwich in the car." So I remember that. And about 20 minutes later, I lost him at the concert. Didn't see him for like 6 or 8 hours. And I remember that too, that I ran into a friend of mine from the neighborhood, and he's like, "How'd you get here?" I was like, "My cousin took me." And he's like, "Where is he?" I go, "I have no idea. I lost him." I think the next time I saw him was when like Rusted Root came on the stage. And that was the exact moment I went to the bathroom. I do remember that. When Rusted Root came out, I was like, it's time to go to the bathroom. Completely different audience than I was used to at a concert. My dad will relate to this. It was a lot of people yelling out, "This is my dancing area right here. This is where I'm going to dance." So it was a lot of hippies. People playing hacky sack, and it was an interesting concert. And I said, a lot of concerts I've been to in my life, different feel to them. When I saw Black Sabbath years later, I had my earplugs in to protect my ears, and I still walked out of the concert later and threw up on the street. The vibrations were that powerful. The band was that loud. So this show, Lenny came on much later. And he came on around the time like they lost power, and they were running on generators at this time. And I believe Blues Travelers were last. Yet one of the early bands was 311, and this is during the time they weren't very well known. And I knew them from a person in school. And I was into them, and I remember a friend of mine was shocked I was into them because I don't drink, I don't put any substances in my body. And he was kind of surprised, like, "You like this band?" And they have a pretty good groove to them. So I remember this at the show. Rusted Root's on, everybody's like kind of dancing and loving it. And all of a sudden 311 came out. And as I said, most people didn't know who they were. I remember before this, they were playing in small clubs. All of a sudden, all the hippies started screaming and covering their ears in pain and screaming. And it went on for quite some time. And I think I was the only person that was kind of excited to hear 311 live. I was like, wow. And I had like one of the 311 cassette tapes, one of their early albums, and I had a good time here in 311. I believe I was the only one in the audience that had a good time listening to 311 that day. So Lenny Kravitz, as I said, came on much later, and it was amazing. One of the things that was so great about this show to me, it's the only time I've ever heard a performer that I got so excited that I went home and played all the songs on the guitar. It just got stuck in my memory, and I just thought it was an amazing performance. And I went home and played them all for memory. And it was great. Just great show. I do remember towards the end, he threw his flying V when he was done with the last song. He threw it across the stage. And probably the thought crossed my mind, like, I wouldn't do that with my flying V, because I had recently got a flying V. Great show. And I had recently found proof of it online. I find it interesting that I've been finding old shows I went to on YouTube. I don't know how an individual got a camera into these events, because they would search you. This footage is from the Horror Tour from 1996, the show I was at in Florida, and I have no idea, again, how the person got a video camera in. I mean, just to get a camera in, it was impossible. A video camera, and it's good quality, too. It's pretty, close up. I don't know. So here's some footage of Lenny Kravitz playing with Craig Ross on those Les Paul guitars. Horn section here. I can't remember who the bass player was. And I don't even know if it's a bass player that plays often with Lenny. I imagine so. It's a great show. A lot of energy. There's Cindy Blackman playing drums. There's that flying V. Another one. That's the flying V later on I saw go flying across the stage. And this is one part I remember too, that John Potler from Blues Traveler came out and played harmonica to Rosemary. And I do remember that. It was towards the end of the show. I tell you, one of the things, I wish I still had that tour shirt. It's one of the only times I got a tour shirt from a band, and it's worth a fortune now. And those tour shirts were too much money. Like I said, though, I was so excited from hearing that. I had never tried to play Lenny Kravitz on the guitar before yet. That night I went home and played the whole set. Kind of reminded me of Jimi Hendrix when he heard Sgt. Pepper's for the first time. He learned it immediately and played it again that night. So my final thoughts on the album Circus. Lenny Kravitz, it's great. I really do recommend it. I know some people might think, that sounds different than the other albums. Yeah, that's good. An artist is growing and changing. Curtis Mayfield's music sounds different depending the album. So it's good. It's not the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. It's changing. The artist is changing. What's going on in the artist's life has changed. A lot of emotion in this album. A lot of deep spiritual feelings too. So I recommend it. I'm still thinking of the people screaming at that concert holding their ears. That was fun. Well, until next time, I hope everybody safe and well, and be nice to each other.